Most people look for love the way they look for a job, scanning for compatibility instead of connection, attraction instead of alignment. We're trained to chase chemistry, not clarity. But chemistry fades, clarity deepens. When you understand your why, love stops being about finding someone who fills your emptiness. It becomes about meeting someone who mirrors your purpose. The urgency isn't in being loved, it's in being understood. Because love built on shared purpose doesn't demand effort. It inspires loyalty. The question is no longer, who do I want? But who moves in the same direction I'm called to go? The wrong love feels heavy because it requires performance. The right one feels light because it honors your truth. Most people mistake being noticed for being valued. We live in a world where attention has become the new currency of validation. When someone looks at you, texts you, compliments you, it triggers something deep in the male and female psyche. For men, it feels like proof of worth. For women, it feels like recognition of presence. But the truth is, attention is not affection. Attention is reactive. It's given in moments. Affection is intentional. It's built through meaning. The reason so many people confuse the two is because they haven't defined their why. Without it, every glance feels like a possibility, and every conversation feels like a promise. A man without a clear sense of why he loves will chase attention to feel alive. He'll mistake a spark for connection, pursuit for purpose, and validation for intimacy. He doesn't realize that what he's craving isn't her. It's the feeling of being seen. But when he understands his why, his relationships stop being auditions for approval and start being reflections of alignment. He no longer falls for who notices him. He's drawn to who understands him. Because when a man knows why he loves, his choices stop being emotional reactions and start becoming intentional commitments. Women, on the other hand, are wired to sense emotional direction. They don't just respond to presence. They respond to purpose. When a man doesn't know his why, she feels it. His uncertainty becomes her instability. She might be attracted to his charm, but she can't trust his inconsistency. What starts as passion turns into confusion, and what once felt exciting becomes exhausting. A woman doesn't need perfection. She needs conviction. When she meets a man who leads with his why, she doesn't just feel desired, she feels safe. His clarity creates her calm, because purpose gives love something to stand on. Without a why, relationships become emotional negotiations. Both sides start performing instead of connecting. A man tries to prove he's enough, and a woman tries to feel secure in uncertainty. The moments of attention become the only proof of affection they can find. But the irony is that attention always fades when the why is missing. Love that isn't rooted in purpose becomes dependent on performance. Who texts first? Who compliments more? Who tries harder? And when the performance stops, so does the illusion of love. Attention is easy to get, but impossible to sustain. Affection, however, grows only where purpose is planted. When you define your why before you pursue love, you stop falling for what's shiny and start building what's steady. You begin to see that being chosen means nothing if you don't know what you're being chosen for. The person who sees your potential might not understand your purpose. And if you haven't defined it, neither will you. That's why love without clarity always feels unstable, because you can't align with someone when you haven't yet aligned with yourself. Love built on attention burns fast but dies quickly. Love built on purpose burns slow but lasts deeply. The difference isn't in the chemistry, it's in the clarity. The moment you understand your why, attention loses its power to confuse you, and affection finds its way to recognize you. Most people fall in love with the feeling, not the foundation. The spark feels electric. It's new. It's full of possibility. But sparks are meant to start fires, not sustain them. When the chemistry fades, most couples think something is wrong, when in truth, nothing was ever built beneath the surface. A relationship without shared purpose is like a fire without wood. It burns bright for a moment and then disappears. The illusion of connection comes from emotional excitement, but real connection is built through shared direction. A man often mistakes passion for partnership. He chases the intensity of the beginning because it makes him feel alive. That spark feels him, he's desired, admired, even needed. But when life becomes ordinary, when the thrill is gone, he begins to question whether it was love at all. What he doesn't realize is that love was never supposed to be about constant excitement. It was meant to be about consistent alignment. When a man understands his why, he stops needing sparks to feel alive. He becomes grounded in what he's building, not just in who he's with. The woman beside him isn't just a source of emotion. She becomes a partner in his vision. For women, sparks are often a signal of possibility, not permanence. They feel the emotional energy and interpret it as depth. But when the man's purpose isn't clear, her excitement quickly turns into uncertainty. She might be drawn to his confidence, his charm, his presence. But over time, she realizes those traits aren't direction. A woman feels most connected when she knows the man's energy has a purpose behind it. She doesn't just want passion. She wants partnership with meaning. When she senses his why, her heart relaxes because she can finally trust where the relationship is going. Shared purpose is what transforms attraction into alignment. When two people move towards something bigger than themselves, love stops being about who makes you feel good and becomes about who helps you grow. It's no longer a game of balance. It's a journey of becoming. The right partner doesn't fuel your ego. They fuel your evolution. A man who leads with purpose and a woman who moves with intention create a love that doesn't depend on sparks. It depends on shared belief. That's where loyalty is born. Sparks will always draw people together, but purpose is what keeps them there. When the foundation of love is shared meaning, the relationship stops being fragile. Arguments don't threaten it, silence doesn't weaken it, and time doesn't dull it. Purpose gives love resilience. It becomes the anchor that holds you steady when emotions shift. The passion doesn't fade, it matures. It becomes quieter, deeper, and far more powerful. When love is built on shared purpose, it doesn't have to prove itself through constant excitement. It simply is. The connection moves from chemistry to conviction. The question is no longer, do we still have the spark? But are we still moving toward the same why? Because in the end, love that lasts isn't found in a moment. It's built in a mission. Most people enter love searching for completion, not continuation. They look for someone to fill the spaces they haven't yet learned to accept in themselves. It's a beautiful idea to be completed, but it's also a dangerous one, because if love becomes your source of wholeness, it also becomes your greatest dependency. The right person isn't meant to finish your story, they're meant to join it. They don't complete who you are, they amplify who you're becoming. Love built on need turns into control. Love built on purpose turns into creation. A man who doesn't understand his why looks for someone to make him feel significant. He mistakes being chosen for being fulfilled. When he doesn't feel enough on his own, he unconsciously expects a woman to give him a sense of direction, to validate his worth, to calm his uncertainty. But that's not love. That's rescue disguised as romance. When a man discovers his why, he stops needing to be saved. He no longer seeks a woman to complete him. He seeks one who complements his path. His strength is no longer in how much he provides, but in how deeply he aligns. She doesn't become his purpose. She becomes his partner in it. For a woman, the desire for connection often runs deep. It's emotional, intuitive, nurturing. But when her sense of worth is tied to the role she plays in a man's life, she loses herself trying to sustain his identity. She becomes the caretaker of his insecurity instead of the companion to his mission. Yet, when she knows her own why, love transforms. She doesn't enter a relationship to feel needed. She enters to feel seen. The man beside her doesn't define her value. He reflects her purpose. Together, they don't complete each other. They continue each other's direction with greater strength. Completion is dependency in disguise. Continuation is partnership in motion. When two people come together not to fill voids, but to expand visions, love evolves from emotional survival to spiritual collaboration. Each person brings a clear sense of self, which means they don't drain each other. They develop each other. A man grounded in his why becomes a safe space for a woman to grow. A woman secure in her why becomes the mirror that sharpens a man's direction. They don't fix one another's wounds. They walk through healing side by side. The difference between completion and continuation lies in identity. Completion says, I am half without you. Continuation says, I am whole, and we are stronger together. The first form of love crumbles under pressure because it relies on validation. The second form endures because it's fueled by purpose. When both people know who they are and why they love, they don't merge out of fear. They connect out of clarity. Their relationship doesn't drain individuality, it multiplies it. Love becomes less about what they get and more about what they give. The right person doesn't arrive to fill your emptiness. They arrive to expand your direction. They don't rewrite your story. They help you turn the next chapter. Because when two people love for wholeness instead of need, their connection stops being a transaction and becomes a continuation of their shared purpose. Attraction is easy to find. Alignment is rare to build. The spark between two people can happen in a moment, but alignment is revealed over time. Most people mistake attraction for connection because it feels powerful. The energy, the chemistry, the pull, it's intoxicating. But attraction is about emotion, while alignment is about direction. When two people move in different directions, no amount of chemistry can hold them together. The pull that once felt exciting eventually becomes draining because the relationship starts requiring constant effort to survive what purpose could have sustained. A man often confuses attraction with clarity. He's drawn to beauty, confidence, or mystery, the things that make him feel alive in the moment. But attraction alone doesn't ask him to grow. It only feeds his instinct. Without alignment, that attraction becomes a chase for validation, not connection. He begins to perform instead of lead, trying to keep her attention instead of deepening their purpose. The exhaustion sets in when he realizes that keeping someone interested is not the same as building something meaningful. When a man doesn't lead with his why, he becomes reactive, drawn to moments, not missions. The spark that once motivated him now empties him. Women experience this exhaustion differently. They sense misalignment long before they name it. At first, attraction feels like potential, a hope that connection will grow into something deeper. But over time, emotional intuition recognizes when direction is missing. A woman might stay because she remembers how it felt at the beginning, hoping the energy will return. Yet without alignment, she ends up carrying the emotional weight alone. She invests in potential instead of reality, and that gap between what is and what could be becomes her exhaustion. What once felt romantic now feels uncertain, and what once made her feel alive now leaves her feeling alone. Attraction can start a relationship, but only alignment can sustain it. When two people share a sense of why, the relationship stops being about maintaining interest and starts being about growing impact. They no longer exhaust themselves trying to keep love alive. It stays alive because it moves towards something meaningful. Alignment removes the need for performance. It replaces insecurity with trust and pressure with purpose. Love becomes lighter not because it's easier, but because it's truer. When both people move in the same direction, energy doesn't get wasted. It multiplies. The exhaustion of misaligned attraction comes from resistance. When you're drawn to someone whose values, pace, or vision don't match yours, you end up fighting the current. You can feel the chemistry, but you can also feel the conflict. You start compromising not just your preferences, but your principles. The effort it takes to keep it together begins to drain the very energy that made it exciting in the first place. Alignment, on the other hand, feels natural. It doesn't demand effort to stay interested. It invites consistency to stay connected. The truth is, attraction without alignment always costs more than it gives. The thrill that once filled you becomes the weight that empties you. You stop feeling inspired and start feeling tired because the relationship is running on emotion when not intention. When love is guided by alignment, attraction becomes the reward, not the reason. Because when two people move with the same why, The connection doesn't burn out. It builds momentum. Chasing love is often a symptom of losing direction. The more we crave to be chosen, the less we remember who we are. Many people spend their lives pursuing connection as if it's a prize to be won, instead of something that naturally grows from clarity. But the truth is simple. When your why leads, you stop chasing and start attracting. Love stops being about pursuit and becomes about presence. Because when you live from purpose, you don't have to convince anyone to see your value. They feel it. You move differently. You speak differently. You radiate certainty without having to demand attention. A man without a why often mistakes movement for progress. He dates, flirts, pursues, impresses. But underneath, it's not confidence driving him, it's fear. Fear of being alone, fear of not being enough, fear that if he stops chasing, he'll disappear. He measures his worth by who he can win instead of who he can become. But when a man leads with his why, his energy changes. He's no longer chasing validation. He's creating value. The woman who crosses his path doesn't meet a man who needs approval. She meets a man with direction. Purpose makes him magnetic. His focus and peace become attractive in a world that constantly confuses business with worth. Women are drawn to men who move with clarity. It's not about status or looks. It's about emotional direction. A man who knows why he loves, why he leads, and why he chooses becomes emotionally trustworthy. He doesn't promise the world, he builds it. When a woman senses that kind of certainty, she doesn't feel like she has to guide him. She feels safe walking beside him. But when a man chases without clarity, she feels it immediately. His energy becomes restless, and his actions inconsistent. What begins as attraction turns into pressure, and what started with interest turns into effort. A man's why is what turns pursuit into partnership. For women, the same principle holds true. A woman connected to her why doesn't chase love to prove she's worthy of it. Her self-assurance isn't arrogance, it's alignment. She knows her value doesn't come from attention, it comes from attention. She doesn't seek to be desired, she chooses to be understood. And in that quiet confidence, she becomes magnetic. Men feel it instantly. Not because she's trying to attract, but because she's centered. Her peace becomes her presence. Her why gives her boundaries, and those boundaries don't push people away. They filter who deserves to stay. When your why leads, attraction becomes effortless. You no longer manipulate attention or overcompensate with charm. Instead, you attract what moves in harmony with your values. Relationships that once required constant convincing now grow through connection. You stop performing for love and start partnering in purpose. Love shifts from a chase for validation to a discovery of alignment. The people who once overlooked, you begin to notice, not because you've changed your image, but because you've grounded your identity. Chasing drainergy, because it comes from insecurity. Attracting sustains energy, because it comes from clarity. The right person doesn't need to be convinced when your life already communicates your values. The love that's meant for you will recognize your rhythm, because your why will draw it in naturally. The moment you stop searching for someone to make you feel complete and start living from the truth of who you are, love stops running away. It starts finding you. Most people want to be chosen, but few have truly chosen themselves. They crave a deep, lasting connection, yet haven't defined what they stand for, what they value, or what they're actually ready to give. Love without clarity becomes a cycle of emotional confusion, people wanting depth while living on the surface. To be chosen deeply, you must first choose clearly, because love can only meet you at the level of your self-awareness. When your intentions are vague, your relationships become uncertain. The clarity you avoid in yourself becomes the confusion you experience with others. A man who hasn't chosen clearly will always be chasing approval. He says he wants love, but what he really wants is recognition. He enters relationships without a compass, drawn by attraction, guided by emotion, and lost the moment things get real. He's not unreliable because he doesn't care. He's inconsistent because he's unclear. When a man hasn't undefined what kind of love he wants, every woman he meets feels like an option, not a direction. But when he chooses clearly, when he defines his values, his vision, his why, he stops drifting. His presence becomes rooted. He no longer seeks to be chosen for his potential. He invites someone to join his purpose. That kind of man doesn't chase love. He cultivates it. For women, clarity carries a different kind of power. A woman who hasn't chosen clearly often finds herself accepting love that doesn't fit. She falls for effort instead of intention, chemistry instead of compatibility. She gives deeply, hoping the other person will eventually see her worth, not realizing that love built on hope instead of standards always leads to disappointment. When a woman chooses clearly, when she knows her worth and her boundaries, everything changes. Her energy shifts. She no longer tolerates uncertainty disguised as interest. The men who approach her difference, they either rise to her clarity or fall away from her boundaries. Her decisiveness doesn't make her hard to love. It makes her impossible to misuse. Choosing clearly is not about building walls. It's about defining doors. It's not about who you reject. It's about what you protect. When you are clear about who you are and what you want, you stop attracting confusion because your presence filters it naturally. Clarity becomes your quiet strength. You no longer confuse loneliness with readiness or attention, with affection. You learn that being alone while grounded is far more powerful than being with someone while uncertain. The clearer you become, the smaller your circle gets, but the deeper your connections grow. For men, clarity brings direction. For women, it brings peace. When a man knows where he's going, his confidence becomes stable. When a woman knows what she deserves, her energy becomes calm. Together, that combination creates safety. Clarity attracts commitment because it removes confusion. It tells the other person, I know who I am and I know where I'm going. If you're coming with me, walk beside me, not behind me. That level of certainty doesn't scare the right person. It anchors them. The reason most people struggle to be chosen deeply is because they're still living vaguely. They don't commit to their identity, their vision, or their values. and then wonder why others don't commit to them. You can't expect someone to see your depth when you keep showing them your surface. The moment you choose yourself with intention, the people who are meant for you will recognize it immediately. Because deep love doesn't chase. It recognizes alignment. When you choose clearly, you stop sending mixed signals to the world. You stop saying yes to what feels good and start saying yes to what's right. You stop seeking relationships that validate your insecurities and start creating ones that reinforce your purpose. Clarity is magnetic. It draws in what mirrors it. The deeper you define your why, the easier it becomes to be seen for who you truly are. Because no one can choose you deeply until you've decision to stand clearly in your truth.